Hello, my name is Scott Endler. I teach AP Physics, Physics and Chemistry, and I would like to welcome you back to a new year. More to the point, I would like to show you ways in which our students can be more successful. So, let me first start off with, again, welcome back to school. Everything we do is in Google Classroom. Now, it may be that your student tends to focus on the stream, which always puts the most recent events at the top, but what they should really focus on is classwork. Classwork lists all the assignments, the notes, assignments, and even answers to those assignments so that they can check their work. So that's really where we should begin. They then submit their work to Google Classroom, and I have a record of it. For example, here's an assignment that has been submitted, and one of the nice things about Google Classroom is the time in which it was submitted is automatically recorded. I can zoom in if I wish to see more detail. But it is important when a student submits their work that it is in fact legible in addition to following directions and showing work. For example, in this case, the student has not shown their work in the way that they were directed. Notice how all of the numbers do not have any units, no measurements associated with the numbers. This is what it should look like instead, so that you can see the same questions, but note now every single number is followed by whatever units it's referring to, days, minutes, seconds, grams, whatever the problem is calling for. So on the previous one, again, note the lack of having things done according to the directions, and then one in which everything is done. In general, when I grade classwork and homework, it is based on showing your work as directed, having all your units, showing the steps. And in fact, when I give them notes, not only do the notes tell them how to do a particular problem, in this case, these are conversions, but I also tell them this is the way a problem should look when you work it out. And so this is what I tell them. This is what I hope to get, but sometimes this is what I get instead, and it will not receive full credit. In addition, when I do the notes, I put down step by step how things should be done. So note here, draw the diagram, label the magnitudes, and so forth. Draw the parallelogram. They have an example. In fact, several problems, they'll have an example of what the diagram should look like. All the steps that are involved. As you can see, some problems can take quite a few steps. Then I may get something like this in response to the homework. Now it's clear that there is something there, but it's also clear if you look close at the diagram, you don't see the parallelogram, you don't see any of the units, you don't see any of the equations. It can be kind of tough to figure out what's going on. And of course, sometimes the argument from a student will be, well, I got the right answer. Well, in the beginning, we will start off with problems in which they are simple enough that sometimes you can take a shortcut. But the minute we start to change things up a little bit, suddenly those shortcuts will not work at all. Here's another example of homework that didn't quite make the grade. Notice that it only got 11 out of 15, approximately 70%. It looks like everything has been done, but then when you go and look at the calculations, which was how they got all those numbers, you can see that there are very few calculations listed. Here's another example of work that gets turned in. There's no work at all. There's no answers, nothing. Sometimes a student will turn in work and all they have are the answers, which is kind of pointless because I will often actually give the students all the answers so that they can check their work. And to then just turn around and give me back the answers that I gave them, the point will be, what work have you shown? So as I said, we have notes, we have assignments, I have answers to assignments. All of that can be found on Google Classroom. Now, that is not the only place to find things. You can, of course, go to the websites. So one way is, of course, to go through the Buchanan High website, go to the science department, find my name. Where it says website, you'll go right to my website. The other one is for email. And so, for instance, when you go to my website, you'll see something that looks like this. The thing to focus on are the calendars. For example, if you hit the physics calendar, it shows you the last few years of my teaching physics. If you hit on any one of those, it then shows you what's going on week by week. And again, if you select one of those, you can see everything that we did during the week, not just assignments, not just notes, but also the things that we went over in class. We may have had an activity. Even if it wasn't graded, it will be listed here. Now, I don't tend to put much more onto the web page because I have converted to putting everything into Google Classroom that I can. And so really, this is the place to come back and look to see how things are going. Now, one last thing I'd like to make about teaching science, learning science, because again, sometimes students get caught up in what's the answer, what's the right answer, instead of recognizing that there are more dimensions to the subject than just the answer to the problem. First of all, science is a body of knowledge. There are actual rules and laws that have been discovered over the centuries that we can teach to them. Science is a way of doing things, of investigating and trying to verify your observations, to explain them. Literally, this is how we should try to solve our problems. We read the problem. Sometimes, honestly, the biggest problem a student has is they don't read the problem to begin with. We draw a diagram, especially in physics, many problems. If you have an incorrect diagram, you get led astray. You identify the data. In this case, what are the things that you're told in the problem? What are the things that you're supposed to find out? Then you look at the equations that make sense to go with that information. Solve the equations, and then evaluate and check your answer. One of the things I have told them, for instance, in the vector problems is, once you have an answer, go back to your diagram. Does your answer make sense with what your diagram says? And then finally, science is a way of thinking, a way of approaching new situations. I like to say to students, we live in the Google age. You can Google just about anything. But the real question is, when you do, what do you do with it? When you've tried everything you know how to try, then what you do? In some of the activities that we've already done, part of the point has been to show them changing their perspective is what matters. Many physics problems, many chemistry problems can be quite complicated. But if you simplify them down to a few pieces. Do those pieces one at a time. They become much easier to solve. And being able to visualize those pieces is what this class really is all about. So, if you have any questions, please let me know. But otherwise, I hope we have a wonderful year.